Hey guys, this is the PowerPoint for the notes that you're going to be taking tonight for homework. There's not a bunch of notes. There's just a few. I just wanted to make a video to kind of go over them with you. If you want to follow along and pause the video when you need to fill in the blanks, that would be perfectly fine. I'd like for everyone to have these filled out as much as possible by class tomorrow so that we can kind of go through this part of the PowerPoint a little quicker, so we'll have more time to practice all of these concepts so you can be prepared for your test on Monday. So this section of notes is talking about proteins and nucleic acids. So the first one is proteins. They have the base elements carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Nitrogen is new to us now. We have not had a macromolecule with nitrogen yet, so proteins contain nitrogen. Here's this word monomer again. You've seen that before. Carbohydrates have the monomer, monosaccharide. Lipids, remember, they don't technically have a monomer, but they have base units, which can act sort of as a monomer. And now we've got the monomer of proteins, which is the amino acid. So an amino acid is the monomer of proteins. Each amino acid contains an amino group and a carboxyl group, and we'll look at that structure of this amino acid here in just a second. The polymer is the protein. So remember, the polymer of a carbohydrate is a polysaccharide, and the technical, lipids again don't really have polymers, but if you were to say it was a polymer, it would be like the triglycerides or the fatty acids, something like that. But so the polymer for a protein is the protein. Some examples include enzymes. We talk about enzymes here in the next week. We're going to be doing some fun labs with enzymes. I'm sure you've heard that word before. Hormones, that regulates different parts of your body functions. And of course, spider webs, that's a good example of a protein. The function of proteins are structural support for cells, storage, and cell transport. So let's talk about this structure for a second. This is the monomer of proteins. This is the amino acid. This is the molecular structure of an amino acid. So here's our amino group that we talked about here, our amino group, and our carboxyl group is right here. And this middle is called the side chain, and it varies from what it looks like between the amino acids. There's more than one amino acid. We'll get into that once we talk about DNA replication and transcription and translation. But this can vary among amino acids. But this is our amino group. It's got our two hydrogens bonded to the nitrogen. And then our carboxyl group is our carbon double bonded here with this oxygen and singly bonded here with this oxygen and hydrogen. The amino acid is the building block for proteins. It forms chains that are held together by peptide bonds. That's another new bond that we've talked about. So far, we've talked about ionic, covalent, hydrogen, and now peptide bonds. These peptide bonds hold the amino acids together. Two or more amino acids that are bonded together form a peptide. So two or more amino acids that are bonded together are called a peptide. And a chain of amino acids is a polypeptide. Now here's this poly. We've seen that before. That means there's a lot of peptides. So here's our peptide. A peptide is two or more amino acids bonded together. And peptide bonds form those chains. This is how they are formed. This is where we're going to talk about the amino group and this carboxyl group. Peptide bonds form between the amino and the carboxyl group. So let's pretend here that we've got multiple amino acids. So here's one amino acid over here, and here is another amino acid over here. So they're going to form bonds. What do we call those? If you remember, it's a peptide bond. These bonds are going to be right here. So this carboxyl group is going to bond with this amino group. And then the next amino acid, this carboxyl group is going to bond with this amino group. And then eventually you're just going to have a long chain of amino acids that are bonded together. And the bond between those, remember, is a peptide bond. This is polymerization. Remember, polymerization is the building of monomers into polymers. This amino acid is our monomer. And this is done through dehydration. This is another term we've used before, dehydration. Water is released, so this polymerization is dehydration synthesis. And here is this R group again. It varies from one amino acid to another. And again, we'll get in more with that when we get to our next unit down the road when we talk about transcription and translation and we get into the cells, that's when this amino acid will, this R group will make a little bit more sense. So if you can just remember for the test, it's got an amino group and a carboxyl group, and this right here, this R group, is just a side chain that has different functions. That's all for proteins. Now we're going to move on to nucleic acids. You may have heard this before. It is the building block of DNA. So it has a nitrogen base, a phosphate group, and a 5-carbon sugar. And here's our base elements, CHNOP. The only one that is missing is S. So carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and phosphorus. So here's this monomer again. Again, 3 out of the 4 macromolecules have a monomer and polymer. The monomer for a nucleic acid is the nucleotide. Now, here is the nucleotides. There's 4 different nucleotides. There's a G, an A, C, and a T. And that might sound familiar. If that sounds familiar, that's because it's the building block to DNA. If you remember, the A and the T pair together, and the G and the C pair together. So again, this A, G, C, and T are all nucleotides. That's the monomer of a nucleic acid. Now the polymer is DNA and RNA, and that's many nucleotides. Remember, a mini polymer is going to be DNA. So a DNA strand is going to be a nucleic acid. They are held together by hydrogen bonds. We've talked about those before, and their function is to store genetic information. So the nucleotides consist of nitrogen bases, a phosphate group, and 5-carbon sugar. Here is a good example of what I'm talking about. Here's our phosphate group up here. Here is our nitrogen base over here, and this is our 5-carbon sugar. Now, if you look at this structure, it looks a lot like a carbohydrate, and if you count the sides, it has 5. So there's your 5-carbon sugar. Your phosphate group, if you remember phospholipids, has a circle attached to it. Let me see if I can pull up a picture. Here's a phospholipid. So this also has a phosphate group. It's just a circle connected to the rest of the molecule. And this is your nitrogen base. And the nitrogen base is what's going to be different. So the A, the G, the C, and the T are all nitrogen bases. Here's our base elements again, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and phosphorus. And then here's our types of nucleotides, A, T, G, and C. And we talked about them bonding, the hydrogen bonds between the two. A and T pair together, and in between those are hydrogen bonds. And the G and the C pair together, and those are through hydrogen bonds. So that's all that we have for the notes for this part of the unit. That's all the macromolecules. Congratulations. Give yourself a pat on the back. That is the hardest unit we will have this semester. The next unit will be a little bit difficult as well, but if we can just push through the next couple of weeks, it's all downhill from there. So we'll be just fine after this unit. Got a little bit more of difficult weeks ahead of us. But in class tomorrow, we will talk about this PowerPoint, and then we're going to do a lot of practice. We have a test on Monday, so we are going to be doing a lot of practice tomorrow. We're going to do a short lab tomorrow to kind of test some different foods for proteins and lipids and carbohydrates, kind of like we did today. We're also going to fill out this summary chart tomorrow, so this will also help you study. And I might bring up some study tactics tomorrow as well. I know y'all are still young to the studying part of high school, so you might not know how to study. So I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. So this test is one that you're going to have to study a lot for if you really want to make a good grade. But we'll have a practice quiz tomorrow as well over proteins and nucleic acids. Again, that won't be for a grade, it's just for practice. And then we're going to do a lot of different practice activities. So if you need help, if you need to stay for tutoring, or if you need to come back for tutoring, if you decide to do a reassessment after Monday, absolutely you can do that. Just communicate that with Ms. Palmer or myself. And if you have any questions about any of this material, feel free to leave a private comment. I try to keep track of, I get notifications when you leave a private comment, so I can see when you're asking questions, and so I try to help you as soon as I can. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to leave a private comment or to email me. But that is the macromolecules unit. That's all 4 macromolecules. And I think that after the practice tomorrow, you guys will feel a lot more comfortable with what we have. So I hope you have a great evening, and I will see you tomorrow.